Okay, so of course the focus for us is is just trying to come back to our roots of meditation and meditation training and the protective meditations, of which Buddhanussati, recollection of the Buddha, is one of them, and one of the probably the most important thing that I tried to convey the last couple readings is that seeing the Dhamma is the way to see the Buddha and to turn our attention to the Dhamma and trying to actualize the Dhamma in our meditation practice, in our day-to-day life. And one of the suttas that came up for me to help kind of illustrate that is the four astounding things that happen with the appearance of the Buddha in the world. And of course what's most amazing is that people actually turn to the Dhamma and delight in the Dhamma. This is Anguttara 4, 128. Bhikkhus, with the manifestation of a Tathagata, an Arahant, a perfectly enlightened one, four astounding and amazing things become manifest. What for? 1. People delight in attachment. Take delight in attachment, rejoice in attachment. But when a Tathagata is teaching the Dhamma about non-attachment, people wish to listen, and they lend an ear and set their minds on understanding it. This is the first astounding and amazing thing that becomes manifest with the manifestation of a Tathagata, an Arahant, a perfectly enlightened one. 2. People delight in conceit, take delight in conceit, rejoice in conceit. Mana. But when a Tathagata is teaching the Dhamma for the removal of conceit, people wish to listen, and they lend an ear and set their minds on understanding it. This is the second astounding and amazing thing that becomes manifest with the manifestation of a Tathagata, an Arahant, a perfectly enlightened one. 3. People delight in excitement, take delight in excitement, rejoice in excitement. But when a Tathagata is teaching the Dhamma that leads to peace, people wish to listen, and they lend an ear and set their minds on understanding it. This is the third astounding and amazing thing that becomes manifest with the manifestation of a Tathagata, an Arahant, a perfectly enlightened one. 4. People are immersed in ignorance, become like an egg, completely enveloped. But when a Tathagata is teaching the Dhamma for the removal of ignorance, people wish to listen, and they lend an ear and set their minds on understanding it. This is the fourth astounding and amazing thing that becomes manifest with the manifestation of a Tathagata, an Arahant, a perfectly enlightened one. These bhikkhus are the four astounding and amazing things that become manifest with the manifestation of a Tathagata. So that this Dhamma of the Buddhas is for non-attachment, is for the removal of conceit. And when we say conceit, it's that I position and in comparison to others, and creating that sense of me as separate. And when one is separate, then one is either equal or superior or inferior, and one ends up entangled in those identifications of me. Delighting, and the Dhamma is for leading to peace, not to kind of excitement, stimulation, but to that which is peaceful. And the Dhamma is for the removal of ignorance, sense of seeing clearly. Of course, one of the epithets of the Buddha is, say, awaken, and that's an awakening out of that sleep of ignorance or delusion, where one is enveloped, and the idiom become like an egg, so it's just, encrusted stuff around. The next sutta I thought I would read is it's a short sutta, but it's very important as well. Anguttara 8, sutta number 53, and this is the Gotami Sutta. It's a sutta given to the Buddha's stepmother, and it's 8 things that are basically the essence of Dhamma Vinaya, or the Dhamma and the discipline. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Vesali in the hall with the peaked roof in the great wood. Then Mahapajapati Gotami approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, stood to one side, and said to him, Bhante, it would be good if the Blessed One would teach me the Dhamma in brief, so that, having heard the Dhamma from the Blessed One, I might dwell alone, withdrawn, heedful, ardent, and resolute. Gotami, those things of which you might know, these things lead to 1, to passion, not to dispassion, 2, to bondage, not to detachment, 3, to building up, not to dismantling, 4, to strong desires, not to fewness of desires, 5, to non-contentment, not to contentment, 6, to company, not to solitude, 7, to laziness, not to the arousing of energy, 8, to being difficult to support, not to being easy to support. You should definitely recognize this is not the Dhamma, this is not the discipline, this is not the teaching of the teacher. But Gotami, those things of which you might know, these things lead to dispassion, not to passion, to detachment, not to bondage, to dismantling, not to building up, to fewness of desires, not to strong desires, to contentment, not to non-contentment, to solitude, not to company, to the arousing of energy, not to laziness, to being easy to support, not to being difficult to support. You should definitely recognize this is the Dhamma, this is the discipline, this is the teaching of the teacher. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Mahapajapati Gotami went in solitude and was that was after that, shortly after that was her enlightenment, her awakening, I think. That's my memory. I didn't look it up. Then the next sutta that I wanted to read is Majjhima 35, the shorter discourse to Saccaka. And when we're, I think this struck me or came to mind is because to me it illustrates the Buddha's clarity in presenting his teaching, and laying out the teaching and the training, the Dhamma and Vinaya. There's a certain rigor in applying the mind with not much room for woolly thinking, and that's something that it's just easy to drift into kind of woolliness and not very clear thought processes, and still sort of think, well, it's okay. Here I am practicing, I'll be okay. But it's important that the Buddha's teaching is requiring us to be really clear on what is Dhamma. Okay, thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Vesali in the great wood in the hall with the peaked roof. Now on that occasion, Satyaka the Niganta's son was staying at Vesali, a debater and a clever speaker, regarded by many as a saint. He was making this statement before the Vesali assembly: I see no recluse or Brahmin, the head of an order, the head of a group, the teacher of a group, even one claiming to be accomplished and fully enlightened, who would not shake, shiver, and tremble and sweat under the armpits if he were to engage in debate with me. Even if I were to engage a senseless post in debate, it would shake, shiver, and tremble if it were to engage in debate with me. So what shall I say of a human being? Then, when it was morning, the Venerable Assaji dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, went into Vesali for alms. As Satyaka the Nikanta's son was walking and wandering for exercise in Vesali, he saw the Venerable Assaji coming in the distance and went up to him and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, Satyaka the Nikanta's son stood at one side and said to him, Master Assaji, how does the recluse Gotama discipline his disciples? And how is the recluse Gotama's instruction usually presented to his disciples? This is how the Blessed One disciplines his disciples, Agivesana, and this is how the Blessed One's instruction is usually presented to his disciples. Bhikkhus, material form is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, perception is impermanent, formations are impermanent, consciousness is impermanent. Bhikkhus, material form is not self, feeling is not self, perception is not self, formations are not self, consciousness is not self. All formations are impermanent, all things are not self. That is how the Blessed One disciplines his disciples, and that is how the Blessed One's instruction is usually presented to his disciples. If we have heard what the recluse Gotama asserts, we have indeed heard what is disagreeable. Perhaps some time or other we might meet Master Gotama and have some conversation with him. Perhaps we might detach him from that evil view. Now at that time, 500 Lichavis had met together in an assembly hall for some business or other. Then Satyaka the Niganta's son went to them and said, Come forth, good Lichavis, come forth. Today there will be some conversation between me and the recluse Gotama. If the recluse Gotama maintains before me what was maintained before me by one of his famous disciples, the bhikkhu named Assaji, then just as a strong man might seize a long-haired ram by the hair and drag him to and drag him fro and drag him round about, so in debate I will drag the recluse Gotama to and drag him fro and drag him round about. Just as a strong brewer's workman might throw a big brewer's sieve into a deep water tank and taking it by the corners, drag it to and drag it fro and drag it round about, so in debate I will drag the recluse Gotama to and drag him fro and drag him round about. Just as a strong brewer's mixer might take a strainer by the corners and shake it down and shake it up and thump it about, so in debate I will shake the recluse Gotama down, shake him up and thump him about. And just as a 60-year-old elephant might plunge into a deep pond and enjoy playing the game of hemp washing, so I shall enjoy playing the game of hemp washing with the recluse Gotama. Come forth, good Lichavis, come forth. Today there will be some conversation between me and the recluse Gotama. Thereupon some Lichavis said, who is the recluse Gotama that he could refute Saccaka the Niganta's son's assertions? On the contrary, Saccaka the Niganta's son will refute the recluse Gotama's assertions. And some Lichavis said, who is Saccaka the Niganta's son that he could refute the Blessed One's assertions? On the contrary, the Blessed One will refute Saccaka the Niganta's son's assertions. Then Saccaka the Niganta's son went with 500 Lichavis to the hall with the peaked roof in the great wood. Now on that occasion a number of bhikkhus were walking up and down in the open. Then Saccaka the Niganta's son went up to them and asked, where is Master Gotama staying now, sirs? We want to see Master Gotama. The Blessed One has entered the great wood, Agivesana, and is sitting at the root of a tree for the day's abiding. Then Saccaka the Niganta's son, together with a large following of Lichavis, entered the great wood and went to the Blessed One. He exchanged greetings with the Blessed One, and after this courteous and amiable talk was finished, sat down at one side. Some of the Lichavis paid homage to the Blessed One and sat down at one side. Some exchanged greetings with him, and when this courteous and amiable talk was finished, sat down at one side. Some extended their hands in reverential salutation towards the Blessed One and sat down at one side. Some pronounced their name and clan in the Blessed One's presence and sat down at one side. Some kept silent and sat down at one side. When Saccaka the Niganta's son had sat down, he said to the Blessed One, I would like to question Master Gotama on a certain point, if Master Gotama would grant me the favor of an answer to the question. Ask what you like, Agivesana. How does Master Gotama discipline his disciples? And how is Master Gotama's instruction usually presented to his disciples? This is how I discipline my disciples, Agivesana, and this is how my instruction is usually presented to my disciples. Because material form is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, perception is impermanent, formations are impermanent, consciousness is impermanent. Because material form is not self, feeling is not self, perception is not self, formations are not self, consciousness is not self. All formations are impermanent, all things are not self. That is the way I discipline my disciples, and that is how my instruction is usually presented to my disciples. A simile occurs to me, Master Gotama. Explain how it occurs to you, Agivesana, the Blessed One said. Just as when seeds and plants, whatever their kind, reach growth, increase, and maturation, all do so in dependence upon the earth, based upon the earth, and just as when strenuous works, whatever their kind, are done, all are done in dependence upon the earth, based upon the earth. So too, Master Gotama, a person has material form as self, and based upon material form, he produces merit or demerit. A person has feeling as self, and based upon feeling, he produces merit or demerit. A person has perception as self, and based upon perception, he produces merit or demerit. A person has formations as self, and based upon formations, he produces merit or demerit. A person has consciousness as self, and based upon consciousness, he produces merit or demerit. Agivesana, are you not asserting thus? Material form is myself. Feeling is myself. Perception is myself. Formations are myself. Consciousness is myself. I assert thus, Master Gotama, Material form is myself, feeling is myself, perception is myself, formations are myself, consciousness is myself, and so does this great multitude. What has this great multitude to do with you, Agivesana? Please confine yourself to your own assertion alone. Then, Master Gotama, I assert thus. Material form is myself, feeling is myself, perception is myself, formations are myself, consciousness is myself. In that case, Agivesana, I shall ask you a question in return. Answer it as you choose. What do you think, Agivesana? Would a head-anointed noble king, for example, King Pasenadi of Kosala, or King Ajatasattu Vedehiputta of Magadha, exercise the power in his own realm to execute those who should be executed, to find those who should be fined, and to banish those who should be banished? Master Gotama, a head-anointed noble king, for example, King Pasenadi of Kosala or King Ajatasattu Vedehiputta of Magadha, would exercise the power in his own realm to execute those who should be executed, to find those who should be fined, and to banish those who should be banished. For even these oligarchic communities and societies, such as the Vajjayans and the Malayans, exercise the power in their own realm to execute those who should be executed, to fine those who should be fined, and to banish those who should be banished. So all the more, so should a head-anointed noble king such as King Pasenadi of Kosala or King Ajatasattu Vedehiputta of Magadha. He would exercise it, Master Gotama, and he would be worthy to exercise it. What do you think, Agivesana, when you say thus, material form is myself? Do you exercise any such power over that material form as to say, let my form be thus, let my form not be thus? When this was said, Satyaka the Niganta's son was silent. A second time, the Blessed One asked the same question, and a second time, Satyaka the Niganta's son was silent. Then the Blessed One said to him, Agivesana, answer now. Now is not the time to be silent. If anyone, when asked a reasonable question up to the third time by the Tathagata, still does not answer, his head splits into 7 pieces there and then. Now on that occasion, a thunderbolt-wielding spirit holding an iron thunderbolt that burned, blazed, and glowed appeared in the air above Satyaka the Niganta's son, thinking, if this Satyaka the Niganta's son, when asked a reasonable question up to the third time by the Blessed One, still does not answer, I shall split his head into 7 pieces here now. The Blessed One saw the thunderbolt-wielding spirit, and so did Satyaka the Niganta's son. Then Satyaka the Niganta's son was frightened, alarmed, and terrified. Seeking his shelter, asylum, and refuge in the Blessed One himself, he said, ask me, Master Gotama, I will answer. What do you think, Agivesana? When you say thus, material form is myself, do you exercise any such power over that material form as to say, let my form be thus, let my form not be thus? No, Master Gotama. Pay attention, Agivesana. Pay attention how you reply. What you said afterwards does not agree with what you said before, nor does what you said before agree with what you said afterwards. What do you think, Agivesana? When you say thus, feeling is myself, do you exercise any power over that feeling as to say, let my feeling be thus, let my feeling not be thus? No, Master Gotama. Pay attention, Agivesana. Pay attention how you reply. What you said afterwards does not agree with what you said before, nor does what you said before agree with what you said afterwards. What do you think, Agivesana? When you say thus, perception is myself, do you exercise any power over that perception as to say, let my perception be thus, let my perception not be thus. No, Master Gotama. Pay attention, Agivesana. Pay attention how you reply. What you said afterwards does not agree with what you said before, nor does what you said before agree with what you said afterwards. What do you think, Agivesana? When you say thus, formations are myself, do you exercise any such power over those formations as to say, let my formations be thus, let my formations not be thus? No, Master Gotama. Pay attention, Agivesana. Pay attention how you reply. What you said afterwards does not agree with what you said before, nor does what you said before agree with what you said afterwards. What do you think, Agivesana? When you say thus, consciousness is myself, do you exercise any such power over that consciousness as to say, let my consciousness be thus, let my consciousness not be thus? No, Master Gotama. Pay attention, Agivesana. Pay attention how you reply. What you said afterwards does not agree with what you said before, nor does what you said before agree with what you said afterwards. What do you think, Agivesana? Is material form permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Master Gotama. Is that which is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, Master Gotama. Is that which is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus, this is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, Master Gotama. What do you think, Agivesana? Is feeling permanent or impermanent? Is perception permanent or impermanent? Are formations permanent or impermanent? Is consciousness permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Master Gotama. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, Master Gotama. Is what is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus, this is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, Master Gotama. What do you think, Agivesana? When one adheres to suffering, resorts to suffering, holds to suffering, and regards what is suffering thus, this is mine, this I am, this is myself, could one ever fully understand suffering oneself or abide with suffering utterly destroyed? How could one, Master Gotama? No, Master Gotama. What do you think, Agivesana? That being so, do you not adhere to suffering, resort to suffering, hold to suffering, and regard what is suffering thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. How could I not, Master Gotama? Yes, Master Gotama. It is as though a man needing heartwood, seeking heartwood, wandering in search of heartwood, were to take a sharp axe and enter the wood, and there he would see a large plantain trunk, straight, young, with no fruit bud core. Then he would cut it down at the root, cut off the crown, and unroll the leaf sheaths. But as he went on unrolling the leaf sheaths, he would never come even to any sapwood, let alone heartwood. So too, Agivesana, when you are pressed, questioned, and cross-questioned by me about your own assertion, you turn out to be empty, vacant, and mistaken. But it was you who made this statement before the Vesali assembly. I see no recluse or Brahman, the head of an order, the head of a group, the teacher of a group, even one claiming to be accomplished and fully enlightened, who would not shake, shiver, and tremble, and sweat under the armpits if he were to engage in debate with me. Even if I were to engage a senseless post in debate, it would shake, shiver, and tremble if it were to engage in debate with me. So what shall I say of a human being? Now, there are drops of sweat on your forehead, and they have soaked through your upper robe and fallen to the ground. But there's no sweat on my body now, and the Blessed One uncovered his golden-hued body before the assembly. When this was said, Satyaka, the Niganta's son, sat silent, dismayed, with shoulders drooping and head down, glum, and without response. Then Dhammika, the son of the Lichavis, seeing Satyaka, the Niganta's son, in such a condition, said to the Blessed One, "A simile occurs to me, Master Gotama." "Explain how it occurs to you, Dhammika." "Suppose, Venerable Sir, not far from a village or town, there was a pond with a crab in it. And then a party of boys or girls went out from the town or village to the pond, went into the water and pulled the crab out of the water and put it on dry land. And whenever the crab extended a leg, they cut it off, broke it, and smashed it with sticks and stones, so that the crab, with all its legs cut off, broken and smashed, would be unable to get back to the pond as before. So too, all Satyaka the Niganta's sons' contortions, writhings, and vacillations have been cut off, broken, and smashed by the Blessed One. And now he cannot get near the Blessed One again for the purpose of debate." When this was said, Satyaka the Niganta's son told him, "Wait, Dhammika, wait. We are not speaking with you. Here we are speaking with Master Gotama." Then he said, "Let be, Master Gotama. That talk of ours and other ordinary recluses and Brahmins, it was mere prattle, I think. But in what way is the disciple of the Master Gotama one who carries out his instruction, who responds to his advice, who has crossed beyond doubt, become free from perplexity, gained intrepidity, and become independent of others in the teacher's dispensation? Here, Agivesana, any kind of material form whatever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a disciple of mine sees all material form as it actually is, with proper wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Any kind of feeling whatever, any kind of perception whatever, any kind of formations whatever, any kind of consciousness whatever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a disciple of mine sees all consciousness as it actually is, with proper wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. It is in this way that a disciple of mine is one who carries out my instruction, who responds to my advice, who has crossed beyond doubt, become free from perplexity, gained intrepidity, and become independent of others in the teacher's dispensation." Master Gotama, in what way is a bhikkhu an arahant with taints destroyed, one who has lived the holy life, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, reached his own goal, destroyed the fetters of being, and is completely liberated through final knowledge? Here, Agivesana, any kind of material form whatever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a bhikkhu has seen all material form as it actually is, with proper wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. And through not clinging, he is liberated. With any kind of feeling whatever, any kind of perception whatever, any kind of formations whatever, any kind of consciousness whatever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a bhikkhu has seen all consciousness as it actually is, with proper wisdom thus: this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. And through not clinging, he is liberated. It is in this way that a bhikkhu is an arahant, with taints destroyed, one who has lived the holy life, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, reached his own goal, destroyed the fetters of being, and is completely liberated through final knowledge. When a bhikkhu's mind is thus liberated, he possesses three unsurpassable qualities: unsurpassable vision, unsurpassable practice, and unsurpassable deliverance. When a bhikkhu is thus liberated, he still honors, respects, reveres, and venerates the Tathagata thus. The Blessed One is enlightened, and he teaches the Dhamma for the sake of enlightenment. The Blessed One is tamed, and he teaches the Dhamma for taming oneself. The Blessed One is at peace, and he teaches the Dhamma for the sake of peace. The Blessed One has crossed over, and he teaches the Dhamma for crossing over. The Blessed One has attained Nibbana, and he teaches the Dhamma for attaining Nibbana. When this was said, Saccaka the Niganta's son replied, Master Gotama, we were bold and impudent in thinking we could attack Master Gotama in debate. A man might attack a mad elephant and find safety, yet he could not attack Master Gotama and find safety. A man might attack a blazing mass of fire and find safety, yet he could not attack Master Gotama and find safety. A man might attack a terrible poisonous snake and find safety, yet he could not attack Master Gotama and find safety. We were bold and impudent in thinking we could attack Master Gotama in debate. Let the Blessed One, together with the Sangha bhikkhus, consent to accept tomorrow's meal from me. The Blessed One consented in silence. Then, knowing that the Blessed One had consented, Saccaka, the Niganta's son, addressed the Lichavis. Hear me, Lichavis, the recluse Gotama, together with the Sangha of good bhikkhus, has been invited by me for tomorrow's meal. You may bring to me whatever you think would be suitable for him. Then, when the night had ended, the Lichavis brought 500 ceremonial dishes of milk rice as gifts of food. Then Saccaka, the Niganta's son, had good food of various kinds prepared in his own park and had the time announced to the Blessed One. It is time, Master Gotama, the meal is ready. Then, it being morning, the Blessed One dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went with the Sangha bhikkhus to the park of Saccaka, the Niganta's son, and sat down on the seat made ready. Then with his own hand, Saccaka, the Niganta's son, served and satisfied the Sangha of bhikkhus headed by the Blessed One with the various kinds of good food. When the Blessed One had eaten and had put his bowl aside, Saccaka, the Niganta's son, took a low seat, sat down at one side, and said to the Blessed One, Master Gotama, may the merit and the great meritorious fruits of this act of giving be for the happiness of the givers. Agivesana, whatever comes about from giving to a recipient such as yourself, one who is not free from lust, not free from hate, not free from delusion, that will be for the givers. And whatever comes about from giving to a recipient such as myself, one who is free from lust, free from hate, free from delusion, that will be for you. So if anybody has any questions, comments about those readings?
I really appreciate the satire in that last sutta.
Yeah.
And just kind of how it portrays just the games people play. And, particularly in the context of debate where the motivation is oftentimes to win rather than to find truth. And then also just, the Buddha's lack of timidity and being willing to press someone who's clearly trying to manipulate him.
Yeah, no, there's some sly humor in the Pali Canon. Yeah.
Having read your book, Developing Immeasurable. I'm sorry, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Having read that and hearing differing opinions on the use of metta for oneself, I'm not certain how to carry that in practice.
carry it kindly.
I recall times where I have interacted with people in really kind ways where there really wasn't much of a sense of self, kind of more of like a feeling of being a mirror to someone. And in those moments, I felt more metta and love and kind of lightness of mind than any time that I've ever tried to practice metta for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, I've heard people say, I've heard teachers say that practicing self-metta is unnecessary.
Oh, that's a bit strange. Why would one exclude oneself from loving kindness when it's something that is abundant, exalted, measurable, immeasurable? I mean, that sort of abundant, exalted, immeasurable for everybody else except me, who's just abandoned, exhausted, and miserable.
That was the chant Ajahn came up with. So, abandoned, exhausted, and miserable.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving retreat.
Oh, he actually sung that on a Thanksgiving retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there isn't. That's the whole point of metta, is actually it doesn't have that discriminatory quality, and certainly the basis or foundation should always be oneself, and it's not easy, but it is important, and to a certain degree one has to learn how to direct or to generate loving kindness as best one can, finding an object of some sort so that one gets a feel for what metta is, what it could be, and then begin to build on that as a base and learn how to expand or extend.
I had a question about the Buddhist teachings regarding like the five khandhas as in the sutta that you just read, in terms of saying like form, I cannot say in regard to form, let it be thus, let it not be thus.
Yeah.
Something I've pondered from time to time is like that with other people, it's the principle of not self is obvious because I can't, exert any willpower over another person. I can't make them behave in certain ways by thinking about it. But then we have this sense of self around our own five khandhas because we can use our will to say, like, we can decide to do something. We can use an act of will to kind of have an influence on our experience. So I think that's where a large sense of our sense of self comes from, is that there is like some
agency there
with our thoughts and our willpower. And so I've been wondering where that fits into the Buddhist teachings on not self, and what is that ability to will.
Well, yes, one has some agency, but then with that, does one have ultimate agency? No, not at all. So it's just sort of putting it in its context. And then also recognizing that, yes, one might have some agency, but then why do I end up muddled and confused and doing things that are not for my own well-being, and my happiness, and not for other people's well-being and happiness. You know, how do I keep doing that? So it's just sort of seeing that there's this in the end we prop up an illusion of control, but we don't have much ultimate control. And then even when we have control, we don't exercise it that wisely. So it's sort of it's just seeing it in that context, and that in the same way that when the Buddha talks of that, can let my form be thus, let my form not be thus. It's more like, can I will myself to not age, not get old, not get sick, to not die? I mean, these are sort of more ultimate questions, rather than can I shave my face and my head and clean up a bit? And that's pretty minimal.
Yeah, but even then, it's like you have to work for it. You can't just say let my hair disappear. May my head be shaved. It's like you have to go through this whole process. Yeah, it's like a huge burden.
Also, sometimes think about that too. It's like the whole quality or the whole mental factor of intention checking. Intention really feels like, okay, well that's where I can really experience a sense of self or perception of self, because there's this kind of this welling up of me, doing something or making a determination. But when you think about it and take it back a little further too, you think about it, that welling up of intention, the formation of an intention to act, is dependent on other independent factors too, like contact with some thought, some idea, that's dependent on something else arising, some circumstance. So you can always trace it back to something that is independent of any kind of agent. You can always trace it back to some sort of occurrence of the world, or some sort of stimulation, something that's coming in through the senses or the mind, from which that intention arises. And then you can sort of see, okay, well, actually that intention isn't who I am either. It's just based on other conditions. It's all this rolling mass of conditions influencing each other and regenerating experience.
Ajahn, I have a question. In the reading, there was discussion about suffering and happiness, and suffering is impermanent, but not happiness. But isn't in reality happiness impermanent as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, I'm pretty sure that it's more like it's using. I think what it's using as well, using that in that formula for the that sense of it's using suffering as something that is say unwanted, or so it's more like a rhetorical device, not using it so much as happiness is somehow permanent, but more like that which is impermanent. When it's suffering, do you really want to keep going back to that suffering all the time? So it's more like, and when we say suffering, that has a very strong, broad sense of that unsatisfactoriness, or that sense of not leading to ease and peace and clarity. So it's more of the sense of using that which we quite naturally don't want to experience as a device to remind us, oh yeah, this really needs to be seen clearly and let go of.
I like to contemplate like perception is not self. Like that's one where it's more poignant for me. Like the way, like if I'm perceiving something a certain way, it's like I have a feeling that, like, you know, that's my informed way of perceiving that thing or something, or whatever it is. But actually, that's just causes and conditions, and it's built up, and that's why perception is that way. Perception is, I can't say, no, I'll perceive it this other way. It's like I can't just will myself to do that.
So do you think, in terms of, is it skillful to contemplate that Chaitana, that intention and that agency and experience, or do you think it just tends to cause confusion and kind of get one caught up in muse around self?
No, it's actually, it is important to contemplate Chaitana, intention, volition, because it is, I mean, that one is that the Buddha has a very, very simple statement or formula of, in terms of, like, Chaitana is karma. That's how we create, that's the root of all action, is that the volition behind a thought, speech, action of any kind. So it's that intention, that movement of mind towards something that is your causal factor of why things come to be, and why we act or why we react in certain ways. So it's that it is very important to be understanding volition, and the problem is we, it's easy to get all sort of tangled up in it, and what because one is part of it is somehow with the English language, the word intention has a bit more. It's not really a good translation for Chaitana. I much prefer the translation as volition, so like a volitional impulse, a movement of mind towards something. Because as soon as we invest that energy into it, then we set things in motion. And we have to understand what is pulling us, what is creating that impulse within the mind, either towards to wanting or not wanting, or liking, not liking, approving, disapproving, and if we don't really understand the impulse behind that volition behind, then we're going to be caught in cycles of delusion and ignorance. So, and that's and it is interesting that in some, like in the framing of the Four Noble Truths, there is suffering, there's cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, path leading to cessation of suffering. The Buddha also formulates. There is karma, there is the cause of karma, there is a cessation of karma, there is a path leading to cessation of karma. So that's where that understanding of volition is really important. But if we approach it with, and it has to be in the same way that when you investigate the Four Noble Truths in terms of this is dukkha, this is origin of dukkha, you're not looking at it through the lens of self or of me, or you're looking looking at it through an experiential kind of lens. This is the experience of dis-ease or discontent or discombobulation. And what is it? And in the same way, well, this is karma, this is action, this is a movement of an acting in body, speech, or mind. Because that's the word karma is just the root of it is just the verb to do. So that understanding is causes, conditions, is cessation, and it's coming to that path. Of course, the path is the same.
So, in relation to like dependent origination, avijja would be the generating force of volition.
Yes, but I mean, avijja is a root problem. So that just as that's where that cultivation of mindfulness and clear comprehension, cultivation of reflection and investigation and so forth.